Hey man, there's a language more ancient than words, more primal than touch, more intimate than anything you could ever say, and that's the language of eye contact. When you speak with your eyes, you're not just communicating, you're transmitting energy. You're bypassing her logical mind and going straight into her nervous system. That's why it's so powerful. That's why, when done right, it can shift the entire dynamic between you and a woman without you ever having to speak, because your eyes tell her who you are. They show your calm, your confidence, your dominance, your restraint. They reveal whether you're a man who leads with intention or one who hides behind words. A man who knows how to use his eyes doesn't need to chase. He doesn't need to validate, impress, or prove. His gaze does the work for him, not in a creepy or forceful way, but with a slow, anchored presence that commands attention without demanding it. When your eyes are calm, still, and focused, she feels it. She feels like you're looking into her, not just at her. And in that moment, something awakens. Her breath shortens. Her guard softens. Because your gaze doesn't beg for anything, it simply says, I see you. I'm not afraid of you, and I'm not here to be liked. I'm here to experience you. You've got to understand, most men never master their gaze. They look down too fast. They shift their eyes. They glance away when she meets them. Why? Because they're hiding something. They're hiding uncertainty. They're afraid of being seen. And when you're afraid of being seen, you automatically place her in the position of dominance. But when you hold eye contact, you say without saying, I have nothing to hide. And that right there is what triggers deep psychological attraction, because now she's not just being looked at, she's being felt. When you speak with your eyes, you remove the need for constant verbal communication. You say more in 1 second of held eye contact than in 10 minutes of talking. You tell her, I'm grounded, I'm here, I'm not going anywhere, but I'm also not chasing you. It's subtle, it's powerful, and it bypasses the part of her that wants to test you. Because now, she's not dealing with a man who reacts, she's facing a man who watches, and that level of calm observation makes her question her own emotional movements. She slows down, she adjusts her tone, she becomes softer. Your eyes are the first thing she reads before you even open your mouth. If they're darting, nervous, overly excited, she knows you're not centered. But if they're slow, relaxed, and steady, she feels something rare, security. And women don't desire men because they're charming. They desire men because they feel safe in their presence, not just physically but emotionally. And that emotional safety begins the moment she sees that your eyes don't flinch, that they aren't scanning the room, that they're anchored like a lighthouse. That's when she starts trusting. That's when she starts leaning in. Want to create sexual tension without saying a single word? Use your eyes, not in a way that objectifies, but in a way that holds space. You look at her lips, then back to her eyes. You slow your blinking, you soften your facial expression, and you let her feel your stillness. That calm intensity speaks directly to her body. It makes her wonder what it would feel like to be closer to you. Not because you touched her, but because you didn't need to. You let your gaze do the seducing. Your eyes also communicate intention. If you're unclear within yourself, she'll see it. If you're doubting yourself, she'll feel it. But if you're clear, if you're calm, if you're rooted in purpose, your eyes will reflect that. They'll tell her, I know who I am, I know what I want, and I'm not in a rush. That level of emotional maturity is deeply magnetic because most men are in a rush to be understood, to be approved, to be accepted. But you're just there, holding space, letting her come to you emotionally. That difference creates gravity. And here's what most guys miss. Your gaze needs to be disciplined. You don't stare her down. You don't look too long without blinking. You're not trying to intimidate. You're not performing. You're simply being present. You let your gaze rest softly. You blink naturally. You stay relaxed in your jaw. Your shoulders stay loose. And in that stillness, she relaxes too. Because now, she's not being watched by a boy trying to seduce her. She's being seen by a man who doesn't need to speak to be felt. Eye contact also controls rhythm. You hold it just long enough to create a moment, then look away slowly. You let her sit in the space you just opened. You let her wonder what you're thinking. That moment of wondering is what creates psychological pull. And when you look back again, now there's a story, a pulse, a rhythm that builds attraction because it's felt, not forced. She starts interpreting your gaze. projecting into it, and that projection becomes desire, because now you've invited her into the dance and you never had to say a word. When a woman says a man has bedroom eyes, what she's really talking about is calm confidence. The man who looks at her like he's already imagined the most intimate version of her, but doesn't need to make it happen. He just sits there, quiet, present, focused, and that subtle confidence creates a safe space for her to open. Because she doesn't feel pressured, she feels seen. And when a woman feels truly seen, without judgment, without pushiness, without insecurity, that's when she opens emotionally, physically, and spiritually. When your eyes carry intention without expectation, you shift from being just another guy to being the man she remembers. Not because you were loud, not because you told the perfect joke, but because something in your eyes lingered with her. They held her, they challenged her. They invited her into a space that most men are too afraid to create. You weren't seeking her approval, you were offering a calm, unapologetic presence, and that energy, that quiet pull, it doesn't just make her curious, it makes her crave clarity through your connection. Because in your stillness, she sees a man who doesn't need her attention, and that's why she wants to give it. The real power of your gaze isn't just in seduction, it's in leadership. Your eyes communicate. I've got this, you're safe here. That's what women respond to on a primal level. You walk into a room, and before you speak, you scan it calmly. Not like a man looking to take something, but like a man who already owns the ground he walks on. That's what makes her feel secure. That's what makes her feel feminine. She doesn't have to lead. She doesn't have to pull answers from you. She feels your gaze, and she trusts it. That trust isn't built through words. It's built through emotional stillness that radiates through your eyes. There's also power in restraint. A man who uses his eyes well knows when to look away. He knows when to break eye contact, not because he's scared, but because he's controlled. You don't give constant eye contact to maintain dominance. You give just enough, then withdraw. And that withdrawal creates longing. She feels the emotional vacuum when your eyes leave her face. And in that moment, she's wondering, what is he thinking? That question alone means you've already entered her mind. Now she's chasing, not because you pulled her, but because you created a mystery inside your stillness. The greatest seduction doesn't happen in conversation. It happens in the space between moments, when you glance up at her after a pause, when you meet her eyes in a crowded room and say nothing, when you stand across from her, close enough to touch, and just look. No rush, no jokes, no compliments, just a slow, grounded gaze that makes her feel known. That's how you bypass surface-level attraction and start creating something deeper, something that makes her go home and still feel like you're in the room. Because that gaze doesn't leave her body, it lives in her memory. Your eyes are also your boundaries. You can tell a woman no with your voice, but if your eyes are soft and hesitant, she'll push anyway. But if your gaze stays firm, unshaken, she knows you mean it. That silent boundary, communicated through your energy, speaks louder than 100 arguments. She sees the line, she feels it, and even if she doesn't agree, she respects it. Because now you're not just a man trying to be liked, you're a man leading with presence. And presence doesn't explain itself, it just is. This is why eye contact is the quickest way to shift the emotional frame. If things are tense and you stay soft in your gaze, you disarm her. If she's testing you and you meet her eyes calmly, without blinking or flinching, you neutralize the test. If she's unsure and pulling back, and you just watch her, not begging, not reacting, just witnessing, you remind her that you're not moved by her storms. That steadiness, that masculine calm, that's what gives her permission to soften. That's when the wall comes down. Because you didn't try to tear it down, you simply outlasted it. And here's the most important part. When your eyes carry weight, you don't have to chase connection. Women feel it before they process it. They sense your groundedness. They see how you look at the world, at them, at yourself. And when your gaze comes from a place of self-trust, they feel safe, giving you more. You're not trying to take. You're not trying to impress. You're not trying to dominate. You're simply holding space with your presence, with your stillness, and with your eyes. That's the kind of energy women submit to naturally, not out of pressure, but out of trust. So next time you're in a room with a woman you want to connect with, don't focus on finding the right words. Focus on your eyes. Relax your shoulders, drop into your breath, Look at her, not with hunger, but with quiet awareness. Let her see that you're not just interested in her body, you're present for her being. And when you look at her like you don't need to own her, because you already own yourself, that's when she starts surrendering the very thing no words could ever reach her mind. Because in the end, speaking with your eyes is about mastering your presence, and presence is what separates the men she forgets from the man she dreams about. It's not about being more aggressive, it's about being more anchored, less movement, more meaning, less noise, more gravity. When you learn to let your eyes carry your message, your authority, and your emotional clarity, everything changes. She doesn't just see you, she feels you. And once a woman feels you without being touched, she's already halfway yours. So lead with your gaze, man, not with desperation, not with neediness, not with lust. Lead with calm knowing. Look at her like you've already earned her interest, but you're not pressed about what happens next. That look, that calm, centered, steady look, that's how you win her respect. That's how you win her mind. Not with words, but with the only thing she can't stop thinking about long after you leave. The way you looked at her like no man ever has,